There is a version of this story built for instant outrage. It says one rapper blinked, another rapper won, the internet picked a side, and every detail that appeared after that became proof of a hidden plot. It is clean. It is dramatic. It is also exactly how hip-hop's most complicated moments get flattened into memes before anyone has time to read the receipts. The real J. Cole story is not smaller because it is more careful. It is bigger. Because the question around J. Cole was never simply whether 7 Minute Drill was a good diss record. The real question is what happens when an artist whose career has been built on reflection, restraint, and long-form self-examination gets pushed into the fastest, loudest, least patient format in rap, public combat. And the answer arrived in public, on a festival stage, without a mysterious source, without an anonymous screenshot, and without a fan account translating somebody's facial expression into a manifesto. J. Cole said he had moved in a way that did not sit right with his spirit. He called the record the lamest thing he had done in his life. Then he removed 7 Minute Drill from streaming. That is not the ending of a simple story. That is the beginning of a more revealing one. Before we go any further, lock one thing in, this video is not here to sell you a secret playing conversation, an unreleased collaboration album, a hidden grudge, or a source close to the building who somehow knows exactly what an artist played in a private room. If there is no direct interview, no official release, no reliable reporting, or no on-record confirmation, it belongs in the rumor column, not in the history book. And that distinction matters now more than ever, because J. Cole is no longer sitting in the aftermath of that moment. He is in the era of the fall-off. The album that fans waited years to hear arrived in 2026, and the official tour schedule stretches from North America to Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. So the conversation is no longer just, why did J. Cole apologize? The sharper question is, what did that apology reveal about the artist entering this final chapter moment? The answer is uncomfortable for people who only enjoy rap when it can be scored like a boxing match. J. Cole did something many artists would not do. He changed course after the crowd had already been invited to cheer. And that choice still bothers people because it interferes with the version of masculinity, rivalry, and victory that the internet prefers. Go back to March 2024. Future and Metro Boomin released Like That, with Kendrick Lamar appearing on the track. Kendrick's verse reignited a debate that had been hovering over rap for years, who really deserves the top spot. In the public imagination, the so-called Big Three had been J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, and Drake. Kendrick's verse rejected that shared framing. It did not arrive as a press release. It arrived as a competitive rap verse, which is where hip-hop has always negotiated rank, ego, skill, and legacy. Then J. Cole responded with 7 Minute Drill, released on the original version of Might Delete Later. That title feels different when you know what happened next. 7 Minute Drill was not a scorched earth record. Its tone was measured compared with the tidal wave that would later surround the Kendrick Lamar and Drake battle. J. Cole criticized Kendrick's catalog, including the line that described Kendrick's first project as classic and his last as tragic. In another moment, that could have become the start of an extended technical debate, catalog versus catalog, bars versus bars, legacy versus legacy. But the song landed in a climate that had no patience for half-speed escalation. The audience did not want nuance. The audience wanted blood. That point is not speculation. J. Cole said it himself at Dreamville Festival. He described the pressure around him, the calls, the messages, the feeling that everybody wanted a war. He also made clear that he did not feel genuine hostility toward the artists involved. He spoke about Kendrick Lamar and Drake as peers whose greatness he had been fortunate to chase. That distinction is easy to overlook, but it changes the frame completely. J. Cole was not presenting himself as a man driven by personal hatred. He was describing a man who felt the cultural demand for a response and briefly stepped into it. Then he stepped back out. For some people, that makes J. Cole weak. For others, it makes J. Cole self-aware. But either way, it makes him unusual, because the normal rule of public feuds is escalation. Once a diss arrives, the machinery expects the next diss. Fans turn it into a deadline. Reaction channels turn it into a tournament. Social media turns every silent hour into evidence. The record stops being just a record and becomes a referendum on a person's courage. J. Cole interrupted that machinery. At Dreamville, he did not hide behind a vague statement. He did not pretend the song had been misunderstood. He did not release a carefully phrased note drafted to sound brave while admitting nothing. J. Cole told the audience that the track disrupted his peace. He said that, after hearing it and seeing the conversation around it, it did not feel right. He praised Kendrick Lamar's greatness, apologized, and said the song would be removed. That is the verified event. It is already dramatic enough. But here is where the story becomes more interesting than the viral version. In hip-hop, an apology is rarely allowed to remain an apology. It has to be converted into a larger theory. It must mean fear. Or manipulation. Or cowardice. Or a secret alliance. Or a hidden debt. Or an off-camera warning. Every blank space becomes an invitation for somebody to invent a bridge. The problem is that the more sensational the bridge becomes, the less people look at the ground they are actually standing on. J. Cole's public words tell us what we can responsibly say. He felt conflicted, he responded under intense pressure, he regretted the response, he removed it. Those facts do not require a conspiracy to be meaningful. In fact, they become more meaningful when we stop decorating them. Because J. Cole has spent much of his career making music about the tension between ego and conscience. The difference in 2024 was that millions of people were watching the tension unfold before it could be processed in a verse. That is the part that makes the 7-minute drill chapter worth revisiting during the Fall-Off era. For years, the Fall-Off existed as both an album title and a symbol. J. Cole teased it long before it arrived. Fans attached their own expectations to it: finality, legacy, decline, self-assessment, reinvention, maybe even retirement. When an album is talked about for that long, the title starts doing work before the music does. Every public move becomes part of the imagined thesis. Then 2026 arrived. J. Cole officially announced the album's February 6 release. Reporting around the announcement noted that he had been teasing the project since at least 2018, including the title's appearance in the framing of 1985 from K.O.D. The rollout also suggested a multi-disc scope, and the release positioned J. Cole in a rare kind of spotlight, not just promoting a record, but finally answering years of anticipation. That timing makes people want to rewrite the old battle as a neat prologue. It is tempting to say the apology was the beginning of the end, or the proof that J. Cole was already stepping away. But temptation is not evidence. An artist can regret a song without retiring. An artist can refuse a feud without refusing competition. An artist can acknowledge another rapper's greatness without surrendering his own. That last point is crucial. Too much of the conversation treats respect as the opposite of confidence. But J. Cole's catalog does not support that reading. J. Cole built a career on plainly stating ambition, insecurity, hunger, faith, doubt, and the pressure of being measured against giants. J. Cole has never needed to act as if competition did not exist. What he rejected was a particular form of competition that stopped feeling truthful to him. That might not satisfy viewers who need every storyline to end with a winner holding a belt. It should satisfy people who care about what the artist actually said. And accountability is often less glamorous than revenge, which may be why it is so often treated as a loss. Here is the first point where the audience has to choose what it values. Do we want artists to mean every word they say about peace, brotherhood, and spirituality only when there is no cost? Or do we want them to correct themselves when their behavior moves away from their stated values? Because if the only apology we accept is one that changes nothing, then we are not asking for integrity. We are asking for theater. J. Cole gave people a real correction, and real corrections are messy. They make supporters uncomfortable. They make critics suspicious. They create a record that can be mocked forever. But they also leave a public trail that says, I reconsidered this, and I chose something different. That may not be the loudest act in the history of rap. It may be one of the rarest. And it gets even more complicated when you bring Kendrick Lamar into the picture. Kendrick Lamar did not need J. Cole's apology to validate his position in the larger 2024 battle. The Kendrick vs. Drake conflict became its own enormous cultural event, with records, responses, accusations, fan campaigns, chart debates, and months of interpretation. J. Cole's brief entry sits beside that story, but it is not identical to it. That distinction is important because people keep trying to force all three artists into one clean triangle. The truth is that the relationships, competitive instincts, histories, and public strategies were never identical. Kendrick Lamar's verse on "Like That" did not produce one uniform reaction. Drake's response path was not J. Cole's response path. J. Cole's apology was not a statement about whether competitive rap itself should disappear. It was a statement about what he personally could live with. The internet dislikes personal distinctions. They are hard to monetize. A more explosive headline says somebody was exposed, destroyed, terrified, or secretly betrayed. A more responsible headline says, an artist publicly explained that he regretted participating in a feud and withdrew his record. One is designed for immediate combustion. The other has enough truth in it to survive tomorrow. And this is where the J. Cole story becomes a test of media literacy inside hip-hop culture. When a video tells you that a private conversation changes everything, ask a plain question: who confirmed it? If the answer is no one, then it does not change history. It changes engagement metrics. When a narrator says a source close to an artist revealed a private habit, ask whether the source is named, whether the outlet has verified it, and whether the claim can be independently checked. If not, it might be gossip. It might be fan fiction. It might be a guest dressed in cinematic music. When somebody says a future response is inevitable, he will speak, he is planning something, the whole timeline is about to flip, remember that certainty is not reporting. It is a prediction wearing a costume. You do not have to hate rumors to place them in the right category. Rumors can be fun. Speculation can be part of fandom. The issue starts when a rumor becomes the foundation for judging a real person's motives, morality, or career. J. Cole deserves more than that. Kendrick Lamar deserves more than that. Even the listeners deserve more than that. The verified material is already full of tension. J. Cole dropped 7-minute drill. J. Cole apologized. J. Cole removed the track. Kendrick Lamar continued into a historically visible conflict with Drake. The falloff finally arrived after years of anticipation. J. Cole's official tour calendar is extensive and global. None of that needs an invented secret meeting to matter. J. Cole has always understood the weight of that phrase. His work has repeatedly returned to the gap between who an artist is in public and who he is when the noise fades. That is why the 2024 moment has such staying power. It did not just create a battle narrative. It exposed the collision between J. Cole's public role and his private compass. Public role: elite rapper, member of a generational top tier, proven performer, founder of Dreamville, a competitor expected to respond. Private compass: somebody who said the record disturbed his peace. Those two identities are not enemies. But they can become enemies in a moment of pressure. Maybe that is why the apology hit so hard. It was not the kind of thing people expected an elite rapper to say in the middle of a headline feud. The expected script was more aggression, more cleverness, more tactics. Instead, J. Cole exposed uncertainty. And nothing unsettles a rigid fan narrative faster than a famous person acting like a human being. The loudest critics will say that this is just a polished way of calling J. Cole scared. Fine, say it if that is your view. But do not confuse an opinion with a verified motive. And do not ignore the other possibility, that J. Cole recognized the difference between performing hardness and living with the consequences of it. Those are not the same thing. A diss track can be art. A diss track can be sport. A diss track can be a turning point. It can also be a decision an artist later regrets. All of those things can be true without turning J. Cole into either a saint or a villain. That is the second uncomfortable point. The best reading of this moment may be the least satisfying for people addicted to simple character roles. J. Cole is not the helpless victim of the internet. He chose to release the record. J. Cole is not necessarily the coward some critics call him. He publicly accepted the humiliation of retracting it. Kendrick Lamar is not obligated to become a symbol in every J. Cole narrative. Kendrick's own public work and battles stand on their own. Drake is not an accessory in every interpretation either. His separate conflict with Kendrick had its own enormous stakes and its own public record. And fans are not innocent bystanders. We reward the most absolute story because absolute stories are easier to share. That is the loop. Somebody makes a claim. The claim becomes a clip. The clip becomes a reaction. The reaction becomes a certainty. The certainty becomes the background for the next claim. Before long, people are debating a fictional version of events with the intensity usually reserved for facts. Breaking that loop does not make the conversation boring. It makes it sharper. So here is a sharper way to look at J. Cole in 2026. The fall-off is not automatically a retirement announcement just because the title sounds final. The official rollout and touring plans show an artist still actively presenting his work to the world. A global touring schedule is not the behavior of someone who vanished. It is the behavior of someone turning an album era into a live, international event. At the same time, a tour is not proof that J. Cole will make records forever. Artists change. Priorities change. Albums can be chapters rather than endings. We do not need to write the final sentence before J. Cole writes it himself. That patience is harder than it sounds, because hip-hop is built on anticipation. We love the next response, the next surprise guest, the next bar, the next feud, the next twist. But anticipation becomes destructive when it turns every silence into evidence that somebody is plotting, hiding, or collapsing. J. Cole's 7-minute drill episode is a perfect example. The initial moment was real. The public pressure was real. The apology was real. The removal was real. Then an entire industry of reaction attempted to add meanings that none of the principals had publicly confirmed. The more mature story is not that nothing happened. The mature story is that enough happened. J. Cole showed that status does not protect anybody from insecurity. J. Cole showed that a career full of accolades does not make public pressure disappear. J. Cole showed that changing your mind in front of millions can be more punishing than doubling down. And J. Cole showed that, in an environment designed to reward escalation, there is a price for choosing restraint after you have already stepped into the ring. That price is legacy debate. Every time J. Cole is ranked against Kendrick Lamar or Drake, someone will bring up 7-minute drill. That is inevitable. The song has become a shorthand. For some, it is the evidence that J. Cole does not belong in a Big Three conversation. For others, it is evidence that J. Cole is the only one who cared enough about his principles to reverse course. Both readings have limits. A single episode cannot erase a career. J. Cole's body of work, technical ability, commercial success, live reputation, and role in building Dreamville do not evaporate because of one deleted track. But a single episode can reveal something about an artist's decision-making under pressure. That is why it remains part of the conversation. The mistake is demanding that it answer every question. It cannot tell us what J. Cole privately feels about Kendrick Lamar today. It cannot prove a secret decade-long grievance. It cannot prove an unreleased album was ever finished. It cannot prove somebody gave an ultimatum behind closed doors. It cannot prove that any future silence is calculated. What it can tell us is that J. Cole, at a very public moment, decided that the cost of continuing was greater than the cost of being mocked for stopping. Read that sentence again, because it is the center of the whole story. In an economy powered by attention, stopping is expensive. Keeping the feud alive would have created weeks of content. Every bar would have been dissected. Every post would have been treated like a coded message. Every show would have carried the possibility of a new response. The numbers would have been there. The conversation would have been there. The chaos would have been there. J. Cole walked away from that. You can call it a strategic mistake. You can call it a moral decision. You can call it both. But you cannot honestly call it invisible. And the reason it keeps generating content is that it collided with a deeper argument in rap. Is greatness measured by the ability to win every fight, or by the ability to decide which fights deserve your soul? There is no universal answer. Rap is not a monastery. Competition is part of the art form. Bravado is part of the language. Battle energy has produced legendary music. Nobody needs to pretend otherwise. But J. Cole's move forced another question into the room. If competition makes an artist betray the values they say they hold, is that still victory? Maybe some viewers will say yes. Maybe they believe the first responsibility of a rapper is to respond, period. Maybe the record should have stayed up, and the apology was the true error. That is a coherent opinion. But it has to be an opinion, not a manufactured fact. Do not turn J. Cole should have continued into J. Cole was secretly forced to stop. Do not turn I wanted a longer battle into there must have been a hidden threat. Do not turn the timing was interesting into the motive has been proven. Those jumps are where commentary becomes fiction. And fiction is not harmless when it is pinned to real names. Here is where the fall-off changes the lens again. An album era gives an artist a chance to reframe, not by explaining every rumor, but by putting the work in front of people. The record becomes the statement. The stage becomes the conversation. The tour becomes proof that the chapter is active, not frozen in the worst moment fans can replay. J. Cole's official schedule lists dates beginning in Charlotte and moving through cities across the United States and Canada before heading to Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. That kind of itinerary says something simple. There is an audience waiting to hear the music in real rooms, not just argue about it in timelines. And that is the detail that gets lost whenever the story is reduced to humiliation. J. Cole is not a single viral clip. J. Cole is an artist with a long career, a catalog, a label ecosystem, a festival legacy, collaborators, listeners, and a live audience that exists beyond one feud. The same is true for Kendrick Lamar. The same is true for Drake. Their careers are not reducible to the most inflammatory claim made about them in a 20-minute upload. The culture gets better when we admit that. Now, some people will hear this and say it is too careful. They will say hip-hop commentary should be messy, partisan, emotional, and loud. There is nothing wrong with emotion. The best music criticism has emotion. The best rap debates have emotion. The issue is whether emotion replaces the evidence or works with it. You can be excited and still say, we do not know that. You can be disappointed and still say, that has not been confirmed. You can prefer Kendrick Lamar, Drake, or J. Cole and still refuse to invent a private motive for the other two. That is not soft. That is disciplined. And discipline might be the real through line in this J. Cole moment. Not perfect discipline, because the record came out. Not spotless discipline, because he had to apologize in the first place. But the discipline to reassess publicly, absorb the jokes, and live with a decision that did not give the crowd the blood it wanted. The internet wanted an expanding war. J. Cole gave it a confession. The internet wanted another punch. J. Cole gave it a reversal. The internet wanted a simple loser. J. Cole gave it a complication. That is why the moment is still being argued about. If the story were truly simple, it would have died after the first round of memes. Instead, it returns because people cannot agree on what strength looked like that weekend. And maybe they never will. But as the fall-off moves through its own life, through records, performances, reviews, clips, crowds, and whatever J. Cole chooses to say next, the responsible move is to let the actual work and the actual statements lead. Not anonymous whispers. Not recycled, insider posts. Not predictions stated as promises. Not fanfiction timelines stitched together with dramatic pauses. There is a better story right in front of us. It is the story of J. Cole, a rapper who spent years navigating the pressure of being placed among the genre's biggest names, who entered a public conflict, who realized the response did not match his values, who apologized without pretending the decision was painless, and who now stands in the long-awaited era of the fall-off with a global tour ahead of him. That is not a weak story. That is a human one. And the most revealing detail is not a secret somebody claims to have heard. It is the public decision everybody saw. J. Cole chose to accept the hit to his image rather than keep performing a version of himself he did not believe in. Maybe that costs him points in a debate. Maybe it gains him points in another. But it should at least force us to ask what we want from the artists we claim to admire. Do we want them to be permanently trapped inside the most profitable version of conflict? Or do we want them to have room to reconsider, correct, create, and move forward? Drop your answer in the comments, but keep it honest. Was removing 7-minute drill a failure of competitive instinct, a rare act of accountability, or both at once? And while you are answering that, tell me something else. When the Fall Off tour reaches your city, are you going to judge J. Cole by a deleted moment, or by the music he is still willing to put on stage in front of the world? Because that is the next chapter. Not the rumor. Not the screenshot. Not the imaginary phone call. The music. The stage. The audience. And whatever J. Cole decides to say when there is actually something to say. Until then, keep your ears open, keep your standards high, and keep the difference between a confirmed fact and a viral story clear. In hip-hop, the loudest narrative is not always the truest one. And sometimes the most revealing move is the one that refuses to keep making noise.